Angela get Dr. Manhattan's powers in the end, and will we get a second season of HBO's The Watchmen? We got an answer. Sorta. So first, I know a lot of people were wondering if Angela actually got Dr. Manhattan's powers in the end. I thought it was obvious that he put his powers in the egg for her to inherit and for her to have his abilities. Not 100% his abilities, but to have most of them, to inherit them in a way. But after I put out my finale review, some people went, no, she didn't get them. So, I don't know, I thought that was pretty straightforward, but then I was told I was stupid. So, the showrunner and writer for the show actually did an interview, and he shared his thoughts on it and how he thinks it should be interpreted. So first on that, he said, I guess I would say it's hard to make a case in this instance that Dr. Manhattan said all these things to Angela about the egg, that Angela threw the egg carton down with such velocity, and it's all a coincidence. It's much easier to make the case that something wonderful is about to happen to her. It's not my place to say, but I think our intention here was much clearer than it was at the end of The Leftovers. And he actually went on to say further that it's not up to him to say what happened when her foot touched the water, but he does have his own opinion, so he actually went on further to say, Dr. Manhattan has an advantage that we did not when we first sat down to start talking about the story. Dr. Manhattan saw the finale. He watched the finale, but he only gets to watch up to the point where he blows up. He does not know what happens after he blows up. That part for him is unseen. So what is he going to do before he blows up to ensure that his power, which everybody is after, it's a mad world construct where the white supremacists and a narcissistic trillionaire are after his power, is protected. He decides that anyone in pursuit of his power probably shouldn't have it. But this is a show about legacy. He wants to give his power to the woman he loves. Once we settled on that idea, then it was just a matter of executing it. This is not me saying what happens when her foot hits the water. There are certainly two possible outcomes, but if you watch the entire season again, or if you look at the poster for Watchmen that existed 15 weeks ago, our intention is clear. That's what I'll say. And if you go and look at the poster, it clearly shows that she is blue, or she has that blue aura, which some thought was showing, oh, she has a relationship with Dr. Manhattan, but now is being said, no, it's showing in the end she did become the new Dr. Manhattan. She did inherit his powers. What makes her having these powers even more awesome is the showrunners said, okay, think about this. White supremacy is a huge problem, and some of the leaders of a white supremacist group were wiped out, but that doesn't mean white supremacy is gone. He then said, now you have the first black woman in their world with godlike powers. White supremacy is fucked. And I talked about this in my finale. I actually think Angela won't be I said douche, with those powers, and she will use them responsibly, and she's not going to be like Dr. Manhattan and have the experiencing all of time at once and being, in Dr. Manhattan's words, a puppet that can see his strings. And I think that is the reason why we saw a lot of people criticizing in that final episode why Dr. Manhattan didn't do more. I mean, he was criticized in other episodes and throughout the graphic novel of you really just don't give a shit, but especially in the finale, it was said quite a few times, he has all these powers, but he doesn't make the world a better place. And I think Angela is going to go forth and do that. Now, finally, I want to talk about whether there will be a second season. So he was asked if there will be one, and his response was, I want to say yes, but I don't know. So this is what he said. It's so interesting that you present the question that way, because I am interested in a second season. The answer to that question is yes, in the same way that I'm interested in anything that calls itself Watchmen. I do find it interesting where the story could go next. Most importantly, I think we always think about how season 2 of a show is the continuing adventures of the first season of the show. That's what happened on Lost.
That's what happened on Breaking Bad. But there's another thing that's happened on television. Look at season 2 of The Wire. That season, it's the docks. McNulty and the cops are regulated to being second stringers. No pun intended. In the second season of The Wire. The third season is Hamsterdam. The fourth season is a deep dive on public schools. I think Watchmen, not unlike Fargo or True Detective, can accommodate a much larger space of storytelling. That's interesting to me. As for me, I haven't had the idea. I had to convince myself if this was going to be a satisfying 9-episode series. We wouldn't bury things for later, having done the opposite of that thing on both Lost and to some degree The Leftovers.
So he's talking about not continuing the story with Angela now has the powers of a god, what is going on with her, and he talked a little bit more about that in the interview, stating, "But I have to be able to answer the question, what's the idea for the second season? I don't think I'm interested in, nor do I think the audience is interested in, let's just do more of the same. Because then it wouldn't be Watchmen. It requires a new idea. Maybe that idea is going to come from someone else. I would welcome that, 100%. So just more confirmation that he doesn't want to do the same thing. He doesn't want to follow Angela in season 2, and he's open if someone else has an amazing idea to hand off season 2 of Watchmen to them, which I actually think is pretty good for a lot of showrunners because they have egos, and for him to be saying, yeah, I mean, if you have a good story, go for it. And what I love about that response is there's so many stories that they can tell based off the Watchmen graphic novel, and they can jump around just like we saw in season 1 in time. Maybe we go back to the early 1900s. Maybe we do 50 years after the graphic novel. Maybe we go 10 years after the graphic novel. Maybe 5 years we see Laurie and Dan, what they're up to. Dan being arrested and put in jail, and Laurie working for the FBI. There are a lot of things we can do and explore, and I feel like he's right. If we stay tethered to the same thing and continuing on the story of season 1, you really lose a lot of creativity. And really one of my favorite things about this first season was that they jumped around in time, and we got to see little additions to different characters that maybe weren't that important in the graphic novel. Not offending anyone and your favorite characters mentioned in the graphic novel. So I would be completely on board with a second season that isn't a continuation of Angela and her god powers, but something just completely different in a completely different time period. But you can let me know, do you think Angela actually got Dr. Manhattan's powers? Is that the ending you choose to believe? Do you want a second season? And what would you want the second season about? Like, subscribe, and let me know in the comment section down below.